From courtside of the virtual hardwood, it's the NLSC Podcast, a weekly show for basketball gamers and hardcore hoopheads. This is episode 560, and also our 2024 Christmas special, so Merry Christmas and Season's greetings to you all. I am Andrew in our forum, Andrew NLSC on X. Joining me as always, my co-host Derek, DP3 in the forum, and DP3G and DP384 on X. Derek, it's the festive season, and we're also recording this on World Basketball Day, though hoops are always on our minds. So with that being said, please tip us off.
Yeah, as Andrew stated, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to all. Hopefully you enjoyed the special holiday edition of the NLSC Top 10 Plays of the Week. I always have fun putting that one together, Andrew. Some outstanding highlights were submitted by the community, so make sure you check that out if you haven't already on the NLSC YouTube. This episode is also dedicated to the holidays and centered around two community questions. One, Santa is giving you 3 basketball-related gifts this year. What did you tell him you wanted? And the second question is, what is the most memorable basketball-related gift you received during the holiday season? So, Andrew, let's kick this off. Santa is giving us 3 basketball-related gifts this year. It's also important to note that these gifts can be things like bring back hand checking to the NBA or a competitor in the basketball gaming space, etc. And we'll take turns giving our requested gift answers. But Andrew, what did you tell Santa you wanted?
Well, first of all, I was thinking of basketball gaming, so I said more competition and choice in the space, specifically the return of NBA Live, NBA Jam, and NBA Street. I guess this is probably my big gift that I'm asking Santa for. This is something that we've talked about many times before, the desire for competition and choices in the space, the return of NBA Live, just to have something else to play apart from 2K. Now, 2K is still doing pretty well. We do like 2K25. We've talked about that before. We will actually circle back to that in an upcoming show and talk about our final review of NBA 2K25. That is in the cards, that is in the pipeline. But I still want NBA Live to return, and I want Jam to return, and Street to return. Other games too, of course, but those are the big 3 that come to mind for me. Because, look, as much as I love playing older games, Derek, and that has become a big part of what I do at the moment, retro basketball gaming, I do want a new NBA Live to compete with NBA 2K. We need choices and alternatives in the space. We've seen what a Monopoly will do. So yeah, my gift, my wish for the community indeed, is the return of Live, Jam, and Street.
So yeah, I love it. So that was also one of my requests. It's not my first, it's not the most important, but that was one of my gift requests. A competitor in the space, that is fair to the gamer. I think consumers deserve options. This is the case with any genre. More importantly, people do not deserve to be taken advantage of.
Yes.
By NBA 2K monopolizing this space, by them being the only AAA 5-on-5 title, they have been allowed to do whatever they wanted with the series and still rack up the sales. People who like basketball and want to play basketball video games only have one option, and Take-Two knows this. So yeah, that is one of my gift requests. I think that a competitor in the space would not only be welcome by basically any of the basketball gamers out there, it could also potentially keep Take-Two honest. It could make them possibly more fair to the gamer if the competitor coming in isn't equally as predatory, right? Like, we don't know how that would work out. We would hope that they would be more fair to the gamer, and just because it's the right thing to do, right? To be fair to the gamer, to, make it so gamers don't feel like they have to put money into the game all the time in order to have fun with it, right? In order to not feel like they're being taken advantage of in a My Team type mode or online, etc. And I agree. I think that we need more variety in this space as well. Getting another NBA Street style game out there with the NBA license, and one that could potentially include legends and whatnot, and just some awesome classic players. I think that would sell incredibly well if it was marketed appropriately, whether it had an online component or not. But this day and age, it would probably have to have an online component. But that doesn't mean that it would need to be a predatory game. I'd love to see a Street come back. I'd love to see NBA Jam come back. There's so many different things that could be done in the basketball gaming space that's not being done, and I think it's unfortunate.
Definitely, and again, we've talked about this many times before, so it is a fervent wish that we have. And look, this is getting into a whole other topic that could be a show in and of itself, but if Santa was asking me for some specifics, I would say NBA Live being a combination of NBA Live 06 PC, NBA Live 10, and NBA Live 18. NBA Jam, basically a new NBA Jam on Fire edition, and NBA Street, basically a new Street Volume 2.
There you go. That might be asking a little bit much of Santa for one of your gifts. But
Yeah.
maybe he could accommodate that.
It's a little bit greedy, but 'tis the season, I suppose. Actually, no, it's supposed to be the season of giving and peace and togetherness and whatnot. But there you go. That is my wish all the same. So, Derek, what else are you asking Santa for?
So for me, I asked that Santa fix basketball at the youth level. Basically, I asked Santa if he could bring the fundamentals back to the game, moving with a purpose, learning how to use your size and strength, learning how to use many areas of the floor as opposed to having 3-point shots be the primary focus, teaching our youth to make quick, smart decisions with the ball and in triple threat as opposed to over dribbling and hogging the ball, teaching kids that defense is as important as offense and that locking the opposing player up is just as satisfying as scoring a lot of points. Basically bringing back the true nature of basketball, removing the selfish nature from it, removing the one-dimensional nature of it, and in turn making basketball's future bright and returning it to the beauty it once was. So basically I'm asking Santa to bring the sport back to its true form at the youth level. And I think that when that happens, you start seeing a much better, more balanced brand of basketball being played at all levels. And that would end up happening in the NBA after many years. And then the NBA would be amazing to watch again. The fans would like it more. We'd have more true superstars. We'd have more diverse skill sets, etc. So yeah, I'm asking Santa to. It's a pretty big task, Andrew, but I'm asking him to fix basketball at the youth level.
We'll certainly take a Christmas miracle to fix some of the problems with the sport at the moment. We've talked about that in recent shows, and I know that you must have been watching that video that you shared from Brick Center, just an absolutely putrid sequence of basketball saying bar humbug. That couldn't have brought you much Christmas joy, Derek, seeing that particular play.
Yeah, see, Andrew, though, that's the thing is that's very common in the NBA now.
True.
It's one player over dribbling for 10 to 15 seconds at the top of the key and then firing up a contested or semi-contested three or an open deep three and it either not hitting the rim or clanking off the rim, etc. Just being a complete brick. That is now common in today's NBA. And like I stated, my comment on that video was it's brainless basketball.
Yeah.
Just completely mindless basketball. It doesn't take skill to dribble there for 10 to 15 seconds and chuck up a shot. So, way too much of that going on in the NBA today. And that was on full display in that clip from the Hornets game.
8 players standing around doing absolutely nothing, just making it a one-on-one contest. Absolutely. Again, putrid is the word I used, and I stand by that. And you're looking big picture here, because one of my wishes as well was an NBA that's fun to watch from start to finish. And I'll get into that momentarily, but you're looking at it big picture, as you often do, Derek, that it starts at the youth level, that change has to come in, that these players have to come up and be taught that beautiful way of playing the sport, that proper way, I believe, of playing basketball to affect the other levels. So yeah, you're looking at a big picture.
Exactly. I think that you can't expect the NBA to just suddenly be a great product again. You can't expect all of these players who have been taught a certain way all coming up, and now you're seeing that reflected in their play styles at the NBA level. You can't expect all of a sudden for those players to change their play style, right? And all of a sudden be well-balanced basketball players and, be able to do the things that I mentioned, et cetera. So it needs to start at the youth level. I think that that's where the benefit comes from when you start it there. And it's not just about getting the sport back on track from an entertainment standpoint. I want these kids to learn how to play basketball the right way. The fun way,
yeah,
right? Like the way it's meant to be played, the way we've seen it played before. About it being about team, it about being a well-rounded basketball player and a well-rounded athlete. I just don't see that in today's game. I see a lot of selfishness. When I play pickup now with the younger players, the way they play, Andrew, is incredibly selfish. In fact, I got to be honest with you, I can't think of one young player over the last 2 years that I've played with or against that wasn't playing selfish basketball, right? He didn't care about the team. He didn't care about that extra pass. He didn't care about doing the right thing on the floor. He cared about doing his Harden dribbles, right?
Yeah.
He cared about getting his step back in. He cared about scoring as many points as he possibly could. He didn't give any care to the other 4 guys on his team. There's always been chuckers. There's always been selfish basketball.
Sure.
In any era of hoops, but not to this level, right? So, I'd like that to be reversed.
And again, that is the big picture thinking to start at the youth level. I went straight to the top, obviously, and said that I'd like an NBA that is fun to watch from start to finish. People talk about, the regular season is 82 games, that's too long, you can't be engaged for 82 games. We've said it before, Derek, we used to be, back in the day. It used to be this fun roller coaster ride through months of the regular season, culminating in an exciting postseason. In the best case scenario, some seasons went better than others, and of course, if your favourite team is doing poorly, it's sometimes hard to get invested. But back in the day, we didn't have a problem getting invested from start to finish. So I do want an NBA that is fun to watch from opening tip on opening night to the end of the NBA Finals, as exciting as it can be, putting aside any personal bias, of course. I want to see that celebration of the game, that celebration of the history that we don't see these days. Not going to get into all of it again. We've talked about the disrespect of the past before. It remains a big pet peeve, more than a pet peeve for us. I'd love for Santa to get rid of all of that, to bring back that love of the game that is there from start to finish, and enjoy the season, enjoy the ride that is the NBA season. And of course, that does come down to fixing the sport and getting rid of the parts of the sport that we find so boring to watch, so painful to watch, indeed. But yeah, I want to be locked in, even from the off-season, looking forward to the new season and just being locked in from opening night.
Yeah, we used to be glued to Celtics games during the regular season. We never missed them. The regular season games for us were just as exciting as the playoffs. Just seeing them battle, trying to elevate themselves in the standings, seeing us fight for a spot in the postseason, seeing the outstanding performances that would take place in the regular season. The regular season used to be really intense, when we watched hoop for the most part in the 90s and the 2000s. A lot of the regular season games were must watch, right? And I don't feel like that's the way it is today. And I don't see people being as excited about it as they used to be. In fact, if anything, people more often than not are critiquing it and criticizing it, right? Mm-hmm. And oftentimes it's, a team is missing 1 or 2 key players, sometimes 3, either due to load management or due to injuries, et cetera. And, oftentimes the players are playing half-assed on the floor. We've talked about the low effort, especially in the regular season. So the regular season games just don't hit the same, not even close. And it's a combination of the actual product on the floor as far as the way the players and teams play, and the fact that oftentimes key players are missing on a nightly basis.
Absolutely. And some of my favorite memories of basketball and watching the NBA have been regular season games. Obviously, I love the playoffs because I became a fan in the mid-90s when the Bulls, my favorite team, were winning. So they were playing in June and winning championships. That was always exciting naturally. But I can name a number of regular season games that they played and other teams played that really just stick in my mind for one reason or another. In fact, one of my favorite games that I ever watched was the last game of the 2006 season, the regular season, between the Clippers and Mavericks. Most of the big names were resting, so some of the players who were kind of memes in the forum and didn't really get a run were getting more minutes, and that was kind of a wild game to watch and an unusual game to watch because of the players that were playing, but the players that weren't usually getting a run getting big minutes. So these are the memories that stick in our mind.
Exactly. So, Andrew, what was your next wish?
So I've made a couple of pretty big wishes here, Derek. And this one, it actually might be in some ways the biggest and the most difficult for Santa to work his magic with, but a copy of NBA Elite 11, just have a rare collectible. Look, we know that the game is what it is, but I don't have $25,000 or more to just throw away on a game just because it's a rare collectible, but I am a collector, Derek, so I'd love to have it in my collection, so I'm at least going to ask Santa.
Well, Andrew, it's better that you get it from Santa as opposed to spending $10,000 to $15,000
right
for it on eBay. I mean, obviously that would be a fantastic gift, and obviously we can play NBA Elite 11 technically on the PS3 emulator, and it looks and runs beautiful, but it's just not the same, right? No. Like, it's not the same as having the physical copy, having it in your collection, being able to look on the back of that box, etc. So I definitely see where you're coming from.
Being one of the few people in the world to own it. And of course, the pilot episode of our NLSC podcast back in 2010, 2011, we talked to Big Ball 1-2, Pat and I. He actually managed to get it for about $200, I think. A steal back then. You're not going to get it for that low of a price now, but yeah, he actually snagged a copy back in the day, so it's interesting if you want to go back and listen to that pilot episode of him giving some hands-on impressions of Elite 11.
I personally think companies are silly for going through the trouble of creating a complete game, right? All the depth, the graphics, the presentation, even getting it up to release date, like, it's ready.
5 days, yeah.
And then just canceling it. Like, does that really look better on the company?
Didn't help, yeah.
It didn't help, right? They should have stuck with it. They should have just released it. Patching could happen back then at a different level, but they could have tried to patch some of the annoyances, make the default control scheme traditional as opposed to the hockey controls. They could have kept that release out there.
Added a sprint control would have been nice as well.
Right, and that could have been patched in, right?
Presumably,
even back then. Yeah, so like I think that was silly, canceling that, going through all that trouble to create a game, market the game the way that they did, and then just cancel it right after release. I think that's silly.
And ultimately, it set the series back anyway. I mean, would it have still been a huge hit to the series' reputation and been a blunder? Absolutely. But there's some goodwill in releasing the game that's so close to being released. Obviously, it is finished. Like you say, they could have patched some things post-release. They could have taken feedback on board, could have corrected course with an NBA Live 12 or NBA Live 13, not taken all that time off, rebuilt the team, and not been working on the game in the background. Maybe you go back to NBA Live 10. You go back to NBA Live 10 for NBA Live 12, build on that base as much as they can, obviously, then that is at least going to course correct until they get to the new generation and start working on that new generation in the background. But trying to bring the series back after such a big blunder, and then they started the 8th generation on such shaky footing with NBA Live 14. Yeah, NBA Elite 11, the most damaging game in the series, and it didn't even come out. But, if it did come out, it would still be an interesting oddity. I mean, they ran with NBA Live 07, although not on PS3. They did cancel the PS3 release of NBA Live 07. But, yeah, I do think they should have released NBA Elite 11 as is. Would it be any more damaging? I don't think it could be.
Yeah, I don't think it could be. If anything, it would have shown that they wanted to keep the NBA Live series alive.
Yeah.
Right. So, Andrew, I'll get to my last wish. Allow me to play with my brother for another 10 years. My oldest brother loves to play basketball, and we are currently playing in a league together. I'd love to get another 10 to 15 years of memories together on the real hardwood. Nothing beats experiencing these league games together. And me getting a phone call after a game to talk about what just transpired just means everything. It's so fun. We talk about these leagues all the time. The players in them, the competition, the stats, plays that happen, etc. One of my favorite life moments was when we won a league together back in 2014. We went undefeated the entire season, 7-0, and we were underdogs. We weren't supposed to win that league. We were an undersized team. We probably weren't the most talented group. We were often short-handed, but we won that league. And we still can't shut up about that season, even today. We talk about it all the time. With me having major knee surgery recently to repair an ACL and a fractured femur, and him dislocating his patella earlier this year, we thought it might have already been over. However, we were already back playing, So there is definitely hope. But yeah, Santa, give me another 10 to 15 years of playing basketball in leagues with my brother.
No, absolutely. And you brought that up before as one of your favorite basketball memories, real basketball memories, winning that championship in 2014, and certainly a fantastic memory as well. You know, I grew up being very close to my cousin Clinton, and he would come down on the holidays and we would play in the backyard and play basketball games and watch basketball. Obviously, we did actually play one local league game together. He was a ringer. There was some teams pulling some shady stuff at the time, so we decided we were going to do it too. And he was a rep player, so he was a pretty good player, much better than me. And he came in and posed as somebody on our team who was injured for a semi-finals game. And unfortunately, we were playing a very dirty team. Well, one of the players on the team was very dirty. Took him out with a shot to the temple and off the court, and being sick, obviously, from that shot. And that's probably the only time that I've been very close to trying to injure somebody on the basketball court, because that player was already pulling a lot of dirty stuff with us. And when he did that to my cousin, I went for a block that I'm probably lucky that I missed, because, yeah, that was going to be pretty violent.
So I had a similar situation where we were playing in a league, and a former college player, Division I AA, was playing against us. And my oldest brother, who I was just discussing, went to fight through a pick. And the guy setting the pick was this former college player. And he decided at this point that he was going to try to hurt my brother. So he lowered his shoulder on the pick and absolutely leveled my brother to the ground, and he let out like a primal scream after. And I don't wish bad things on anybody, but well, that's not true. There are some pretty evil people out there, Andrew. But at that moment, I didn't care what happened to this guy. I was so upset. I felt so bad for my brother. It really took a toll on him mentally, actually, that after that happened, he actually thought about quitting the season, because he's like, it's not worth it. Right. So I stood up for him. I got in the guy's face. Me and that player, we've seen each other multiple times since. And we won't even talk to each other. We won't even look at each other. Like, I absolutely hate this guy. But there are other players out there, and sometimes they're talented players as well. But they also feel entitled. Right. And they feel like they're invincible, and they at times want to take advantage of other people on the court because it makes them somehow feel better about themselves. And I'll never forget that moment. And yeah, screw that guy.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that it's just not on at all. I don't know why these people besmirch basketball. If you want to hit people, get into a combat sport or something. Sounds like these people want to fight people. Maybe they should be doing that. And look, we've talked about how we appreciate physicality in basketball, but there is a big difference between physical and dirty. And dirty players have no place in the game at any level.
Absolutely agree. So, Andrew, let's get to the community responses. At Nate Stasho, so Live 01 legend, Stasho bro, he kept it simple. He said, I need a new pair of basketball shoes. And I told him, I said, I'm wearing the AE1 mids, so the Anthony Edwards. And I said, what did you have in mind? What do you normally wear? And he stated, I have the Paul George 5s, which, by the way, Andrew, I've never tried those on. I've actually never seen those. He stated, I've been recommended the Anthony Edwards shoe by another hooper, but the design had me apprehensive at first glance. I mean, they're not the most beautiful shoes, Nate. I don't think that the style is that good. I don't think they're great looking shoes. But for me, it's mostly about fit. Is there heel slippage? How's the traction? How does it feel to change directions, et cetera? How I feel when I jump in them. And for me, the Anthony Edwards shoes were perfect. They were exactly what I was looking for. I said it on a previous show, though, talking about the Anthony Edwards shoes, the AE1s, that one thing to note, and it's very important to note, is that there's been noted heel slippage in the lows. I use the mids, and I wear them tight, so I don't have that heel slippage. But if you like lows, there's definitely been a lot of reports of heel slippage in those. And also, they are a little on the heavier side as compared to shoes like Durant's or the Currys. etc. I'd say they're more in line with some of the Jordans that we've seen over the years. But for me, I needed that support. I love the mids. I'm moving really well in them right now post injury. One dribble pull-ups, driving to the hoop, etc. Posting up. I feel like my footwork is really good in them. So I would recommend the AE ones, but everybody's feet is different, right? And one thing that I've noticed is that there's a lot of hoopers out there. You might have noticed this, Andrew, as well, that really like low tops.
Yes.
It feels like more people are wearing low top shoes than ever. And a lot of times, most of the shoes that you see available now at the outlets, at the stores, etc., online, the majority of them are lows. I personally have never been able to wear those. So if Nate normally likes lows, I honestly would not feel fair. It wouldn't feel fair for me to give you advice on what you should get.
But certainly a lot of options at the moment, it seems. And yeah, when it comes to basketball shoes, we're all suckers for aesthetics to a certain point, but like you said, it is important to get one that is right for your feet, that feels right, that is good to play in, that isn't just aesthetically pleasing. Yes, that is important to some extent to our basketball enthusiasm, but you need to take care of your feet and your body in general, so get shoes that fit and shoes that are a good fit for your feet. And I suppose if I was to ask for some shoes, Derek, I'd want some more Jordan 5s. I did have Jordan 5s for years. I played in them, loved them. I was also wearing them even after I stopped playing in local leagues, ended up wearing them out, and they fell apart. So, yes, I'd like a new pair, obviously. Unfortunately, they're not cheap. I did actually get a couple of Rebel Sport gift cards. Rebel Sport is a chain here in Australia. This is not sponsored, but it could be. Got a couple of gift cards for my 40th birthday from my friends to get some new shoes. So, yeah, going to have to head over sometime and have a look.
Are you thinking about getting back into playing?
Possibly. Not right away, but I'd like to have some basketball shoes on hand. Also need some new running shoes as well.
Yeah, and I was always a Jordan guy before, too. I wore Jordans for the majority of the 2000s into the early 2010s. I think in the early 2010s, I switched to the Nike Hyperdunk Elite, which was a mid-top shoe. Absolutely loved it. Almost looked like boxing kicks, but they were super light, flexible. They were really fun to play with. And my first true basketball shoe ever was actually in high school, because I wore basketball shoes before high school, but they were mostly like the Walmart ones, like the Shaq brand and whatnot that were out there. But when I got into high school, we got the Iversons, right? And everybody on the team wanted Iversons. So I was wearing Iversons in high school. Looking back, are they my favorite shoe? No. They were not my favorite shoe ever, but I did like the look of them. And they were certainly, capable on the hardwood. But yeah, I'd say probably for the majority of my basketball life, I was wearing Jordans.
Never had the Escadas, did you?
I did not.
If you did buy them back in 2006, a limited amount of them came with a code to unlock Jay-Z in NBA Live 07.
I'm sorry, but if I saw somebody wearing Jay-Z basketball shoes to play pickup or in leagues or anything like that, I'd have a little bit of trouble taking them seriously.
And of course, NBA Live 07, not the game you want to be in anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Royce states, NBA 2K6 remastered or 2K10 through 17, 19 remastered with the missing Legends added in, and more to add to Legends Showcase. His next wish is a new basketball video game that is not 2K. It can be sim or arcade. And finally, a pair of either the Jordan 12s, 13s, or 17s. And I want to point something out. Thunder Shack made a great point. He was questioning one of these comments about quote unquote remastered, right? And what does that mean? Like when somebody says, I want to NBA 2K6 remastered, does that mean that you want the rosters from that time, maybe even the same depth and whatnot, but with today's mechanics? Or are you looking at NBA 2K6 remastered as updated graphics, but with the same mechanics that were there back when NBA 2K6 was released? Or are you looking for NBA 2K6 remastered to be the same base NBA 2K6 game, but with today's rosters, right? So there sometimes when people say remastered, I think maybe there needs to be a little bit more clarity around what they're asking for. So I completely agree with Thundershack there. What do you think of, Andrew, when somebody says remastered for an old title?
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? And Thundershack did raise a pertinent question there, and this could be a whole show in and of itself as well. This is a topic we should probably circle back to, actually, and talk about in depth. And I think it depends on who's asking. I think some people mostly want the old rosters with new mechanics. I mean, would I love 96 rosters with Michael Jordan, obviously, in, say, a game with 2K17's mechanics and other features? That'd be pretty cool, obviously. But for other people, it would be in that style of the old game with new rosters, as you said, or indeed just playable on modern consoles. So yeah, I think it does mean different things to different people, and yeah, let's circle back to this sometime.
Absolutely. We could do a whole segment on this and get the community's input as well. Moving on to T Gentry at Bucky T. He states, a new competitor in basketball gaming, NBA 2K13, but remastered with the ability to block dunks, and NBA Hang Time for PS1. Yeah, as it relates to 2K13, if you add the ability to block dunks and remove the constant auto adjustments that happen at the hoop, I think that would fix the game for a lot of people. Because I think that driving to the hoop often was too overpowered in that game because of those issues. He also mentions a competitor in basketball gaming, which we already discussed. I think it's vital that happens at some point. And he states NBA Hang Time for PS1. I think NBA Hang Time is in contention for the best arcade basketball video game of all time. I've said it before. I think that the mechanics are so similar to even a much newer title like NBA Jam on Fire Edition that it's just constant fun. It's super engaging. It's just as fun to play defense as offense. Just great presentation, all of that stuff. It's a challenge. I think that NBA Hang Time is right up there with NBA Jam OFE, for best arcade basketball hoops game of all time.
Kind of underrated and overlooked, I agree. Probably because it doesn't have the NBA Jam name. Also, easily the best basketball game on Nintendo 64. I know a lot of people do like Kobe Bryant NBA Courtside. I have affection for that game as well. It's not as good as NBA Live 98 for PC, I'll just put that out there. But Hang Time, an excellent arcade port on N64 there. And NBA 2K13, I agree. The ability to block dunks is essential. I'd also bring in the dribbling controls and the combined pro stick and the approach to dribbling of 2K14 as well.
I could go either way with that. For me, I love the dribbling on NBA 2K13. Sure, it's a little bit more and one style. Sure, it's a little more street ball. But just the feel of the moves that you pull off, right? And just the number of moves that you can pull off on NBA 2K13. I love going one-on-one in that game. But I definitely see where you're coming from. So I could definitely go either way there. So, Andrew, the last response on Twitter, Gilbert's Grape at Sheepsman states, Jordan 11 Concords. I love those, by the way. I own those. I played in those. Those are great. Black Penny Hardaway, Orlando Magic pinstripe jersey. Can't go wrong with that, Andrew. And he also is a nominee for the Basketball Hall of Fame, as I know you probably heard, coming up. So hopefully he gets in. And he said NBA 2K11 remastered. And that's actually where Thundershack jumped in. Thundershack's comment was, what does a remastered 2K11 look like for you? I always wonder what people mean by that because I assume you wouldn't want the gameplay changed too much. Game brought back with some slight touch up to graphics. And that's kind of like how I look at it. So similar to Thundershack, I think that remastered would be maybe touched up graphics, right? Maybe new rosters, possibly, like up-to-date rosters, but with the gameplay not change too much. So I think when I hear somebody say remastered, that's kind of what I have in mind as well. And then there was a random comment by RM88bit on this same post that stated 2K12 GOAT. So he's a fan of NBA 2K12.
Yeah, once again, a topic we're going to have to really dive into in depth. I'd love to do that. But one thought just came to mind, actually, the definitive edition of Grand Theft Auto that obviously touched up the graphics. Mixed results there, obviously, certainly with some of the AI upscaling that they used that ruined signs, made them not readable, and some of the funny signs of stores and so forth in the game. but also added some quality of life features, updated some of the mechanics while still leaving the missions and basic gameplay intact. So maybe something like that.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's different ways to look at it, and I believe people probably have different wishes as it relates to this. But yeah, we'll have to do a whole segment on this on the podcast soon. And then we did receive one response also, Andrew, on Discord. Pep says, give me at least 20 centimeters more of height. So just to give our audience an idea of what 20 centimeters would do for Pep, that would add 7 inches, almost 8 inches to his height. I don't know how tall he is, but I think any hooper would love to have 7 or 8 inches added to their height, especially if they're under 6 feet tall. I'm okay with being 6'2". I think you're okay with being 6'3". My oldest brother is 5'6", Andrew. Do you know how much he would love having another 7 or 8 inches added to his height? It would have completely changed his game and his impact and whatnot. So yeah, a lot of hoopers out there wish they had more height.
It's funny, I certainly wanted to be taller when I was younger, and got excited when I hit 6 foot by the time I was 14. Oh, I'm going to be 6'10". I get to be that power forward, that center. Maybe I can play basketball. I was never going to be that good to play professionally, Derek. And since I'm not, and I'm not a professional basketball player, I'm actually pretty happy at being 6'3". It's taller than average, obviously, but not too tall. So as it is, flying internationally, the few times I've done it has been kind of uncomfortable, kind of cramped in coach there. So yeah, I don't mind being 6'3". It's still tall enough, obviously, to do a few things on the court, and in day-to-day life, it's not uncomfortable.
Andrew can reach the top shelf.
Exactly.
So can I.
That's what I do,
I feel empowered when I'm walking through an aisle in a supermarket and somebody says, "Can you reach that for me?"
Oh, isn't it fantastic?
It's about giving back.
Yes,
Andrew.
Yeah, at this time
at
of year
that point,
too.
I'm giving back thanks to my height, which I had no control over.
No, very empowering when somebody asks you at the at the shops to get something off the top shelf for them. Also had 3 responses on Facebook. First of all, Martin says, NBA lifestyle mixes on Spotify, that's all I want. One example is It's in the Game by Fabulous. And yeah, unfortunately, rights, I imagine, are preventing some of these soundtracks and the special NBA live mixes or 2K remixes being shared on Spotify. But that'd be pretty awesome. I mean, they're up there on YouTube, and you can put together playlists, but I use Spotify, obviously, Derek, and a lot of people are listening to the podcast on Spotify. Shout out to you. But yeah, that'd be really cool to get those 2K and EA remixes of songs and exclusives on Spotify as well.
Yeah. The early 2000s NBA Live soundtracks were so memorable, right? And at that time, NBA Live was the most popular basketball game out there. It was in the majority of hoop heads' homes. And there's just a lot of nostalgia around that music. Both of us have access to the NLSC YouTube channel, and we see all the comments flooding in on those songs even today, right? It's basically a daily thing.
Yeah.
Whether it's commenting on like the Angie Martinez song or, commenting on Chingy Right There, et cetera.
Live mix.
It's, just the amount of nostalgia related to those early mid-2000s NBA Live soundtracks. You can't beat it.
I mean, the basketball experience is what's paramount, obviously. The gameplay and dynasty modes and career mode, etc. But yeah, when you fire up a game and you see the artwork of the menu, you hear the songs again for the first time in years, a huge rush of nostalgia.
It's like Blau, really,
yeah.
Andrew.
Renee says, a new NBA Live release, more classic teams in NBA 2K, for those of us who only play on consoles and cannot get proper PC mods. I'm not tech savvy, but do minimal modding on my rosters. And for Jerry Reinsdorf to sell the Bulls will never happen, so we can get back into contention. I mean, Derek, I would love all of those wishes to be granted for Renee and the community at large. New NBA Live release, as we said, so vital to have competition. More classic teams. There's a lot of classic teams, obviously, in the My NBA eras, and now that we have Play Now eras, we are actually able to play with those rosters, so maybe they see adding those classic teams as superfluous. I think some of them should be pulled out just for exhibition play in general, just for general play now. And of course, yeah, I'd love the Bulls to be back in contention, and maybe we'll take selling the team at this point.
So as it relates to classic teams in 2K, I think there is an overwhelming amount of content now in the 2K games, not in a bad way, I think that they're doing whatever they possibly can to bring UBR style and URB style rosters to everybody, and I think that that's an admirable thing. There's so many different classic teams that are in the game. They have the by NBA eras rosters. Now they have the draft classes. And sure, we've talked about the issues with accuracy, the disrespect given to a lot of the players and teams, the lack of knowledge behind the creation of those rosters at the Take-Two level, etc. And obviously those are all issues. There's also inaccuracies as it relates to jerseys and courts. Sometimes I have a feeling that has to do with them not having the rights for certain art pieces, etc. But at the end of the day, there is a lot of content. There's more content as it relates to classic teams and players and whatnot in NBA 2K than any other sports video game by far. So yeah, as much as obviously I would like to see more classic teams and whatnot, I would almost rather them get the gameplay right? Get the right people on the existing rosters, and make those rosters play the way that they should, those players and teams and whatnot. I'd rather that be the focus than adding any more.
Definitely, but I do see where he's coming from, especially since those new rosters, those new classic teams are basically behind a wall, so to speak, in my NBA eras and eras play now. If there was a way, perhaps, to compromise and have teams from the eras rosters intermingle with other eras or the default classic teams, so you could take, say, the 92 Clippers, who are not going to be a classic team, and have them take on the 98 Lakers. Would you necessarily do that? Some people might, for sure, Derek. We're not going to tell anybody that they're wrong for setting up an interesting matchup on the virtual hardwood. So maybe there could be a compromise there that you can take teams out of those eras and play other eras rosters or the default classic teams. That might be difficult to implement, but that might be a way of expanding the classic teams that are in the game technically, but not readily accessible, and intermingling with the current NBA. And finally, Chad says, a remake of ESPN NBA 2K5, my favorite 2K, NBA 2K25 getting removed from shelves, and LeBron James to stay in the Lakers. Well, you're definitely getting LeBron staying on the Lakers, I imagine. I'd be very surprised if he is traded at this point. He is back in action. Actually, he was back in action shortly after we recorded last week's show where we mentioned him being on a short sabbatical. 2K25 getting removed from shelves, probably not going to happen. And look, it should be there for people who enjoy it, but I definitely get where you're coming from as far as feeling underwhelmed or not happy with the game. And another vote for a remake of a favorite, which, once again, totally get. But, as we said, could mean a lot of things, so let us know what that means to you.
Absolutely. As it relates to LeBron, I think he's going to retire a Laker, and it's probably going to happen within the next 2 seasons. That is my opinion. I don't think he's going anywhere. And then we did actually just receive one final response, Andrew, on Twitter. That's Sorel at _Relhouse states, I asked Santa to bring back NBA Live. I asked Santa to fix NBA All-Star Weekend. Yeah, good luck with that. I think it's just going to be a disaster again this year, Relhouse. And he states, I asked Santa for a Donovan Mitchell Cavs jersey. I actually like Donovan Mitchell, Andrew. I don't like every player in today's NBA. I don't like the style in which they play, for the most part. But Donovan Mitchell, I think he's a tough player. I like the way he conducts himself. I think Donovan Mitchell is a competitor. He has a beautiful looking shot. I like the way he bulldozes to the hoop sometimes. I just like his overall demeanor. So yeah, I'm a Donovan Mitchell fan.
And a lot of fun to play with in NBA Live 18, as we discovered. Yeah,
and they also did a good job with Pro Play for him on NBA 2K25. I've used him quite a bit. And some of the moves he does out there, it looks just like real life.
Before we go on, a reminder that the NLSC podcast comes out every week on the NLSC, NBA-live.com, as well as our YouTube channel. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast apps. If you're listening on any of those apps, we'd greatly appreciate a review. To keep up with the show and everything we're doing with basketball gaming in general, connect with us on social media. On Twitter and Facebook, we are the NLSC. We also have an Instagram, NLSC Basketball, and on YouTube, we're youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. Once again, visit us at nba-live.com, where in addition to the podcast, you'll also find all of our original content, as well as our forum and modding community.
So, Andrew, let's get to the final community question. This segment will be a little bit shorter. So, Andrew, that question is, what is the most memorable basketball-related gift you received during the holiday season? So I'll throw that over to you.
So 3 came to mind, but the one that I'll mention, first of all, is a Michael Jordan number 23 away jersey, which I got for Christmas 1998. And of course, he was on the verge of retiring for the second but not final time at that point. But a few years before, for my birthday, I received a home white number 45 jersey. But by that time, he'd actually switched back to number 23. So I did want that number 23 jersey. Wasn't available in stores for a while here. Was kept on selling out, but asked for it for Christmas 1998. I was right in the thick of my basketball fandom as a young basketball fan at that time, obviously, and got that for Christmas, and still have that today, still in good condition. So that's easily one of my most memorable basketball-related Christmas gifts.
So before that, obviously, you had become a hardcore Bulls fan probably around 1995. What were people getting? Your family must have known. Right?
Oh, yeah.
They must have known that you were super into basketball, that you were super into the Chicago Bulls, that you were a big fan of Michael Jordan and whatnot. So before 1998, what were they getting you as it related to basketball? What was your family getting you?
Well, from memory, packs of basketball cards, multiple packs of basketball cards to open up on Christmas Day. That was a lot of fun, obviously. Still have my collection. My cousin and I, we always talked about, down the road we're going to sell our collections and make a fortune of them. Turns out if everybody's collecting everything, it's not valuable and doesn't become a rare collectible that will sell for a lot of money down the road. But with that being said, I am glad that I still have my collection. It's something that I like to pull out every so often and have a look back at all the cards I collected and remember opening all those packs and the excitement of pulling some of those cards out of those packs. But another gift that I got in 1996 that I still have is a Michael Jordan Wilson signature basketball that I've never used. And at the time, I didn't intend for it to be a collectible, but it was just one that I couldn't bear to wear out. I just loved that basketball so much. So, yeah, it's become a collectible for me.
And you will never use it.
Probably not.
And I don't blame you. Do not use that. I have a signed Celtics basketball that was passed down to me from my grandparents, and it has Dave Cowan's signature on it. It has Robert Parrish, Kevin McHale. Larry Bird's not on it, but it has Robert Parrish, Kevin McHale. I want to say Brian Shaw, his signature is on there, etc. And that basketball was never used, and it will never be used. Right? It's just a collectible. And yeah, basketball cards was a big one for me as well. Basketball cards were pretty much a staple to the holiday season, and we loved getting them. We loved opening those packs, finding Celtics in them because we were big Celtics fans at the time, but also the Stars and whatnot. Having the basketball card sleeves and putting the best cards in the sleeve, and then putting those cards in a 3-ring binder, etc. Yeah, a lot of memories with that. So for me, basketball related holiday memory as it relates to gifts. I'm going to keep going back to when we got NBA Fast Break 98 for PlayStation 1. And I've talked about this on many episodes in the past. We got the console at the same time, so that didn't hurt either. But this game, Andrew, it just blew us away. It was the soundtrack, it was the graphics, it was the signature moves with a move only he can make, the stat tracking, the presentation, just awesome. We would put it on just to look at it sometimes. It felt like a significant jump to us at the time in video gaming. We felt like we were watching a real broadcast. This, of course, wasn't true, right? Like, obviously, games are more superior today from a visual perspective, but back then it just blew us away. And, of course, this was actually the true original NBA 2K developed by Visual Concepts and whatnot. So, we played more exhibition games on NBA Fast Break 98 than any other video game since. Exhibition, we were so impressed with that game that we spent countless hours just throwing on exhibition games, not going into a season, not doing stat tracking, which is what we've basically done since with all the video games and whatnot, but just playing exhibition games, watching the players run out from the tunnel, trying to execute the moves that only those players could make, the signature moves and whatnot. So I'll never forget that Christmas. I'll never forget opening that present and seeing, the Jazz playing the Bulls on the cover and, throwing it in the PlayStation 1 and just hearing that music and just just the feelings we all had about that game.
Now, one of your all-time favorites, understandably so, and of course also came out on PC and Saturn as NBA Action 98. And you mentioned the cover, of course, Adam Keefe covering up Michael Jordan very conveniently, and how high and low would they have searched to find a photo of the Bulls versus Jazz in the finals that didn't have MJ clearly in it.
Yeah, because he was on the floor most of the time, and them finding a photo where I think it's only Jordan's shoulder that's showing, but you can tell it's him. Right?
Yeah.
You can tell it's Jordan behind Adam Keefe. They must have searched long and hard to find that perfect cover, and I think they did a good job with it. But I think the most memorable Christmases that I had was when I could share something like this, that experience, with one or both of my brothers, right? And, when you get a video game and you get a console and whatnot, you're not playing that yourself when you have brothers, right?
Right.
You're playing it with them. And just the fact that we were able to experience that together made it extra special.
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up essentially an only child. I do have a half-brother who is 16 years older than me, so we didn't grow up together, obviously. But my cousin came to stay with us every school holidays, and if I can extend Christmas memories to the Christmas holidays in general, the Christmas holidays for us is also our summer break, so a lengthy time to catch up with my cousin, coming down for weeks at a time and playing basketball. So that is also part of my Christmas holiday season memories. And I just remembered that in 2001, did actually get a PlayStation 2 for Christmas, and that included NBA Live 2002, which is probably one of the reasons why Live 2002 is very nostalgic to me, also being the game that I was playing my last year of high school, and that being a transitional time in my life. Obviously, a lot of things from that time are nostalgic in various ways, but yes, that is also a Christmas memory for me. And also in 2000, I believe it was, getting the third edition of the NBA Encyclopedia, beautiful hardcover encyclopedia. Look, it might be difficult for people to truly appreciate these days with Wikipedia and Basketball Reference. Obviously, so much information you can get online that's being constantly updated. Obviously, the encyclopedia released in 2000 is very outdated now, but what a wonderful gift at the time, and a great collectible, and I love pulling that out and reading it.
In the mid-'90s, I had a basketball almanac that was very similar probably to what you had, that the basketball encyclopedia. And what people need to understand, the younger crowd, is that was Basketball Reference for us.
Yes.
What you guys see on Basketball Reference, which go over the players' bios and it shows their stats and all of that stuff. We were doing the same thing back then. We were just looking at it in the book, right? We were looking at all the same stuff you're looking at today. In fact, a lot of times you would even find more information and more tidbits in the encyclopedia or the almanac and whatnot. And we loved looking at that. We would look at it all the time. That's actually how I discovered that Pete Maravich and Dave Cowens played a season with Larry Bird, right? I didn't see that on the TV or anything like that. I discovered it through that almanac when I was looking through at the different seasons, and I was like, wait a minute. You're telling me that Larry Bird in 79-80 played a season in which Dave Cowens and Pete Maravich were also on the team? That's wild. So it was stuff like that you would find out, and it's similar to how people discover things today, but they do it online. So let's get to the community responses, Andrew. Teddy Bear the Gamer at 317 Teddy Bear states, Nike breakaway pants with the matching jersey, Christmas of 1997. So, yeah, I mean, that sounds great. I don't know if you ever wore the breakaway pants. I know that obviously I wore them when I was in high school. We all had the breakaways and whatnot. But, yeah, the breakaway pants, that was a big thing back then.
I actually never had a pair, but they were huge, as you said. So if you were a hardcore hoop head, you wanted them.
Exactly. T. Gentry at Bucky T states, an actual Spalding basketball when I was in grade school. I got to tell you something. When you're first getting into the sport and you receive a basketball, a store-bought basketball, it is a big deal, right? I remember getting a basketball around the holiday season when I was really little, and I was super excited about it. I remember ripping that box open and whatnot, the one that surrounded the basketball, and trying to use that thing absolutely immediately. And you're probably like, wasn't it cold out, Derek? Well, to be honest with you, we never let that get in the way of us playing. we were out with thin gloves oftentimes in the winter shooting on our outdoor hoop and whatnot. We would shovel snow to create a spot where we could shoot, and one of us would rebound for one another and whatnot. Getting a basketball, it sounds simple, right? But getting a basketball when you're young, whether you're first getting into the sport or, even if you're already into it and you've been into it for a few years and whatnot, but just getting a basketball can be really special.
Oh, yeah, I remember my first basketball for Christmas 1994, actually. A blue basketball. I'm not sure what the brand was. I don't think it was Spalding. But when you do get that authentic Spalding ball, and back in the day, of course, David Stern's signature on it, and this is the ball that they play with in the NBA game balls. Such great collectibles. I do actually still have one that, like the Jordan ball that I mentioned before, isn't used. That is also a collectible now, but I've had a lot of other Spalding basketballs throughout the years. But yeah, you do remember your first basketball and the other fun basketballs that you've collected throughout the years, and getting a new ball and wanting to try it out straight away. Sometimes they become collectibles, as those ones did for me. But you mentioned going out in the cold, and that is certainly dedication to basketball. And we had it the other way, my cousin and I, playing, well, certainly in the winter holidays, we were playing in the cold as well. But in the summer, of course, the Christmas holidays, very hot here in Australia, getting up to 45 degrees Celsius. That's 113 Fahrenheit, Derek. So it's a blasting heat where I live. But going out there and playing as long as we could and guzzling down the water and coming back in to cool off and then going back out again, yeah, you just didn't want to come in.
Exactly. On a related note, Original Sauce QB states, in 1995, my dad got me an NBA basketball. And there's definitely a distinction there, because if you remember correctly, as a kid, you wanted an NBA basketball, right?
Yeah.
Because you love the NBA and whatnot. And there's always these different brands of basketball and whatnot. But the official NBA basketballs were always more expensive. And I actually think they still are today, right? They're like $100, sometimes more, and whatnot, or $80 minimum. So when you got that official NBA basketball, you were like, yeah, you're hooping now, right?
Yeah.
At that point, you want to go out there and you feel like you're playing like the pros. So I definitely understand the distinction there and why that meant a lot. D. Williams at D3 Will states, probably NBA 2K16. So when he got NBA 2K16, that was the best basketball gaming related gift. And I don't blame him. NBA 2K16 was a very strong title in the series. And then we did have one response on Discord, Andrew. Vin states, Christmas 2000 was the best. He states, on Christmas Eve, I got No Mercy for N64, and I know that you'll appreciate that as a wrestling fan.
Yep.
And on Christmas Day, he states, I got NBA and NFL 2K1, and he said, I was as happy as a pig in crap. He didn't say that, but you know what he said. So yeah, NBA 2K1. I was a big fan of that back in the day. Played it a lot, as I did with NBA 2K and NBA 2K2 as well. But yeah, that sounds like a good Christmas.
Absolutely. And of course, as far as the competition is concerned, couldn't get NBA Live 2001 PC until February the following year. That was pushed back because of the skeleton development team that they had. And this is something that we didn't understand until years later. And talking to Rod Redekop on the podcast a few years back and getting the inside story on what was really happening back then. But I just want to circle back to getting basketballs, Derek. You know, you'd still appreciate a cheaper basketball, some kind of store brand basketball, but they always bounce differently and they handle differently. So when you got an authentic NBA basketball, it was just so much better, so exciting.
Yeah, I mean, there's some pretty bad basketballs out there. So when I was playing in high school, it was the TF1000. That's what we used. And then after high school, I started playing in leagues and playing pickup at our local college and whatnot. Everybody basically switched to the Evolutions, right? And those are still incredibly popular today. But then there's also like the basketballs out there, which are like street ball focused and whatnot. There's the cheaper like Super Tax and Pro Tax and whatnot, which I actually don't mind too much, but they definitely don't have the same feel of the Evolutions and whatnot. And in the leagues that I currently play in and the leagues that I've been playing in the last couple of years, Evolution basketballs have been the main choice. We're always using an Evolution basketball.
So yeah, a lot of great Christmas and holiday season memories related to basketball and basketball gaming, Derek. And no surprise, we are a community of hardcore hoop heads after all.
Yeah, exactly. I love getting all of these responses people passionate about not only basketball video games, but basketball in general. So, thanks for always responding to the mailbag each week and getting into the conversation with us, because we love talking about it as well.
And of course, if you get anything fun for 2024, basketball or basketball gaming related, let us know.
Yeah, please do, and we will discuss it on the show.
But with that being said, that has brought us to the end of this week's show. As always, thank you for tuning in, and please join us again next week and every week on the NLSC, nb-live.com, our YouTube channel, or wherever you listen to podcasts. In the meantime, make sure you're following us on social media. That's where you can get in touch with us, and of course, stay up to date with all of our content. So Derek, go ahead and plug the handles.
Yeah, you can reach me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at D43G and at D4384. I'm also on the NLSC, D43, and on YouTube, D43.
As for me, I'm Andrew in the forum and Andrew NLSC on X. The NLSC is on X and Facebook at the NLSC. We're also NLSC Basketball on Instagram and Threads. We're on YouTube at NBA Live Series Center. And of course, keep a look to the NLSC itself, nb-live.com, for everything we do for basketball video games. So, thank you once again for tuning in. Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. And until next time, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Derek.
Go get buckets, everyone.